pretty impressive.
It's so ugly.
You know, when I was a kid, I would have loved to have lived in a place like this.
What's in there?
That's the cellar.
It's filthy.
I like to think of it as character.
Oh, don't get me out.
Alicia, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm really good. I'm really, really good. I'm actually good friends with Mr. Owen Macken. And just ahead of this interview, I messaged him. I was like, I'm speaking to your co-star. And his exact response was, she is my favorite. So
Oh my God. I love him. He's so great. He's so great.
he's okay.
He's okay, but he was just an absolute treat. I loved working with him. He's amazing. I'm so happy for him too. He's been busy, so it's good.
He super has been. A tough question right off the bat. What is your favorite scary movie?
Well, I would say the first scary film that really got me, I think I was about 12 or 13, and it was a film, I don't know if you heard it. It was called Fire in the Sky.
The alien abduction one.
Yes, you know it.
I sure do.
Oh
yeah.
my God, that movie rocked me. I was like, I literally for like months would look out my window terrified thinking aliens were going to abduct me for a very long time. I thought for sure I was next on the list. I really did. That movie was jarring. Like it was, shook.
Shook's the right word. But to date, still unabducted. So you're good.
Still unabducted. Thank the Lord. Yes.
I almost want to apologize on behalf of Ireland in that you had to visit here and film a movie during pandemic, during lockdown, during winter, and kind of confined to a particular part of the country. So, consider this an open invite, of course, to come back and visit the rest of the lovely country now that it's reopened. But was it? It must have been a particularly unique experience filming this movie.
That is the word. It was really unique, but I will say not bad, and not in a way like it's unfortunate that I went all the way to Ireland for 7 weeks and never went to a pub. I mean, that's probably a crime in Ireland. I probably shouldn't say that I said that. That even happened. I mean, but going to sort of hunker down in this bubble in the middle of the country, during the craziest time, with COVID, it was really peaceful and it was so beautiful. And there was an urgency about it because if anyone had gotten sick at that point, because we had no vaccines or jabs, so it was like if anyone got sick, there was no film. We were going to have to shut down that day. Like it was really a do or die situation for the film itself. So it gave an urgency to it, but there was really a piece about it in that I got to spend 2 weeks by myself in this beautiful cottage in the middle of the country with no children bothering me, with my husband. I mean, I was alone, secluded. It was like The Holiday. It was like the movie The Holiday. The only thing missing was Jude Law knocking on my door. I'm telling you, it was really a beautiful experience for me.
Well, oftentimes when people make horror movies, especially ones that are themselves set in particularly spooky locations, you will hear stories come back about stuff actually like creepy stuff did happen, or weird things just happen as you're making the film in a particularly spooky location. Did anything like that happen?
Well, I know. I think Owen is a little bit more intuitive than I am. He has some stories that I think are a little far-fetched, but apparently they happened to him. So I would definitely go to him for a source of that. But I will say there was one thing that I did notice that was very bizarre. And that was right after we finished quarantining, a day before we started filming, Brendan, the director, Owen, and myself all had 3 separate cottages, and all 3 cottages had an infestation of dead flies appear. Thousands of dead flies.
Oh.
And it was sort of like, wait a minute, what's happening? There's this like plague of dead flies, really creepy. And so that sort of kicked off our first day. and they had to have an exterminator come and like get rid of all our flies in the place that we were staying. But then there was a logical theory that because the cottages had been shut down for so long, that when we turned on the heat, it may have caused the flies to arrive. I don't know, but it was very
I prefer the spookier angle, to be honest.
I do too.
Setting the tone of the movie, just completely unnerve you as you're about to start filming.
Exactly.
Well, you mentioned Brendan there, like he wrote and directed this, and I remember seeing The Cellar years ago, like probably around the time that it was first kind of launched.
The short film.
The 10 Steps, I beg your pardon.
Oh, the 10 Steps, yeah, the short.
I beg your pardon. And think he was fantastic and proper, like unnerving. And I loved that this was expanding upon that. But how, I guess it's an interesting angle for me in that, like, how did this land on your lap? How did a spooky Irish movie based on a spooky Irish short film land on your lap? And you're like, that's the one I want to do.
Well, I think a lot of, luck in the way that, things kind of find you. I really believe in that, but I would say the full sort of 7 degrees of separation was that Owen, who was already set for the film, his agent is the same as mine. And so the script was then shown to me because I guess Brendan thought, oh yeah, let Alicia take a look at it. And so I read it and I just thought, wow, I really thought it was great. And I watched the short as well. But in speaking with Brendan, he sort of said, listen, this is not that. We're going to do our own sort of thing. But, obviously you can take a sense of it, but we're really going to focus in on it on a sort of broader idea. But yeah, so after reading the script and then having really, really great conversations with Brendan, our director, it just sort of all started feeling very right. We all had the same opinions about the film and the same sort of ideas and thoughts. So that was really reassuring. And then next thing you know, we were in Ireland. So yeah, it sort of just unfolded naturally, which is really great.
Well, between this and going way back to Are You Afraid of the Dark, to House of Wax, to Captivity, it seems to me you must be inherently a big horror fan. Would you accept the title or the mantle of being a Scream Queen?
I try to space out the horror films that I do to maybe avoid the title, but I wouldn't hate the title. Because I'll tell you what. I think I'm a fan of making horror films. I don't know if I'm a fan of watching them because I'm a little bit of a chicken myself, I will say. But I do enjoy, I will watch horror films. I would just say that I'm more of a sci-fi fan in watching stuff, but to film a horror film is so much fun and so great. And I think my choices and the evolution of the horror that I've done has been a real growth process and really, I think, great in that way. I think The Cellar has a real air of sophistication to it because it's very atmospheric, not so in your face Hollywood, that of House of Wax maybe would be sort of your cliche Hollywood scream fest sort of situation, and Captivity being the real gore sort of Saw vibe. This one felt elevated, and that was sort of where I was at, and I hadn't really tackled that yet. So I'm always interested in doing something new and sort of trying something different. And so, yeah, but sure. Scream Queen sounds good to me.
It sounds good to me too. If someone were to call me a Scream Queen, I'd be like, okay, great.
Sure.
Just in terms of that elevated horror, there is, I'm going to specifically avoid spoilers. This movie goes in some directions in the third act that I was not anticipating.
Yay, cool.
And as a performer in it, it must have been it must take an awful lot of trust in Brendan to properly materialize the directions that the movie goes in. But did you have a vision of how the movie was going in those particular scenes, and did they pay off?
Yeah, and without spoiling it, there was a moment when I finished the script that I thought, I was pretty jazzed because I didn't see it coming either. And so I would say this, I thought, wow, people are either going to be surprised and blown away by the direction, or maybe not dig it, So it was really that thing of but isn't that what we go to see movies for? To sort of be challenged and go, wait a second, this questions all the norm. So I loved that about it. So it was a risk, but I thought, you know what, one worth taking, because I thought I'd never seen anything like that before. I thought that was really cool.
If it's okay, I'm just going to take
it
it
vague.
No, like it's you have to be vague, because I think the best way to go into some of the stuff in this is completely blind and just let it wash over you.
Just go for the ride. Yeah.
Precisely. I'm going to take it way back, if that's okay.
Sure.
The Girl Next Door. Because I've noticed lately there's a big support and push from movies and TV shows, like from Red Rocket and X and Pam and Tommy, where there's a different approach and handling of people who both work in the sex industry and how it's kind of consumed. And it feels to me like The Girl Next Door was tackling that 20 years ago, before it was like a topic. And you can see today, like it still has like a bit of a title of being a cult classic. And I know so many people who absolutely adore that film.
Yeah.
And it's just curious now that like these are the topics that are being tackled by some of the biggest movie makers and TV shows. But it's something that your film really appropriately, in my opinion, handled 2 decades ago.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I think the director, Lou Greenfield, and I really had a lot of conversations about how we were going to approach sort of this character who was in the porn industry, make it believable, but also fit into the film and give it sort of more poetic feel to it. And my big thing was, I always was a big fan of Weird Science.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and Kelly LeBrock, I mean, when she was like, these guys created the ultimate woman, right? And when you watch the film, for whatever reason, I guess maybe the time or maybe the director decided this was how he wanted to go, but it was like they panned up on her in the shower and they never showed anything, but they felt like they showed everything. And at the same time, I think it led audiences to create sort of the perfect woman in their own mind, as opposed to seeing Kelly LeBrock, you know, in the Bear, and then being like, oh, that's what she is. People had to use their imagination in what sort of fit their fantasy. And I remember bringing that up to Luke and saying, listen, like, I know this, you know, this is at a time when American Pie was, you know, huge, and it was really about a lot of like nudity and all this stuff. And I just thought, you know, we could do this in a way that really doesn't show everything at all, but then let the audience sort of create who their perfect Danielle would be. And I think that's why a lot of people felt connected to it and felt such a sort of an attraction to my character, not because of me, but because of the character they created in their own minds, which is like the power of imagination, you know? So I love that we are still sort of, you know, people still love that film, and I get commented on it all the time, and I'm really proud of what we did there. I mean, I wish it would have done more in the moment when it first released, but I think it was a little bit, like you said, I think it was a little ahead of its time in the way we approached it, and people didn't quite understand that, but they kind of get it now, which is great. So, but yeah, what a great movie to be a part of, and worked really hard on sort of developing that relationship between, you know, the porn industry and how we were going to portray this character in this romantic comedy.
Yeah, like I think looking back now, you mentioned American Pie there. Yeah, it was huge at the time, but people don't really rewatch American Pie anymore. Whereas people really do rewatch The Girl Next Door, because it has that kind of inherent kind of likability and timelessness to it. And just one final quick question, if that's okay. We recently spoke to Todd Phillips, and he said he had a script in wait for Old School 2.
Yeah.
And he said all it would take is if everyone involved was like, yeah, I'm on board, then he would like, okay, I'm on board too. So would you come back?
Oh yeah, in a heartbeat. I would definitely. I mean, how funny would it be to see where that high school girl is now? That is actually really interesting. I shot that film, you know, when I was 18 years old, just, you know, getting off the plane from Canada, hoping to make a career for myself as an actress. So I have such fond memories of being so awe-inspired by everyone that was on the film, and really getting to see Will Ferrell shine, and Luke Wilson being so nice and generous to me. And and Todd is like, what a character and what an amazing director. So I mean, to be able to be with that huge gang again, that would be so cool. I think I ran into him a few years back, and he had mentioned that there was a script. So I had heard some things that were kind of circling around, but nothing ever really transpired. So we will have to wait and see.
Well, if it ever does transpire, there'll be plenty of people there to see it. I guarantee that. Alicia, thank you so much for your time today. And do let us know next time you're in Ireland, and we will make sure you get a proper pint in a proper pub.
Yes.
Delta, point vector, epsilon.
There's something in there. It looks like Ellie.
It's here.